morning, good afternoon, good evening. Here is an interview that Trevor Noah gave a few months ago, where he was talking about the 2017 military coup and the mistake that many Zimbabweans made at that point. The mistake was to believe that Emerson Mnangagwa and his coup friends were going to be Democrats and fight to restore good governance in Zimbabwe, because that has not happened. The military coup ended Robert Mugabe's dictatorship, but only to replace it with a new dictatorship. That is the tragedy. Let's listen to the interview itself.
And I was one of those people that stood up, first of all, perhaps the first people that stood up and said, give Emerson Mnangagwa a chance, and how wrong I was. But why did I say that? I say that because I said, this man has sat in the same room with Robert Mugabe. He's seen what Robert Mugabe did in the country. Maybe he's really interested in turning things around. Point number one. Point number two, this man played a role as far as Gukurawound is concerned, the massacre of over 20,000 people in Matabeleland. Maybe it's time for him to make amends for that. So I was generous in my spirit as a God-fearing man that this man was about to do a turnaround. Again, was I disappointed. I was actually approached and agreed to serve in the Presidential Advisory Council. So I've been, as I've said, at close range with the President, advising him on a number of issues. But I've since retired, stepped down, because I can see this thing is not going to end well. I think the lesson that we've gotten, all of us, is that anybody who embarks on a coup does not usually do so because they want to promote democracy, widen economic prosperity, and so forth. The people that launched the coup in Zimbabwe were interested in protecting their small personal interests, ethnic interests, business interests, and economic interests. It was not for the benefit of everybody else, and we are seeing it in terms of from what has been happening since 2017. So what has been happening? We have seen, we thought Robert Mugabe was bad, but sadly, President Mnangagwa has shown an amazing degree of doing things worse than Robert Mugabe ever did. Perhaps the most frightening thing that President Mnangagwa has done is the mutilation of our constitution and the capture of our judiciary.
This was a mistake that should have been avoided, if the truth be told. And it is a pity that, unfortunately, we failed to avoid it. And we have learned and we have paid for it dearly. Whether we have learned anything from it, personally, I doubt it. Ben, do you think we have learned?
Good day to everybody. I don't think a majority of Zimbabweans have actually caught on or to grasp what exactly is happening here. You know, what is happening in Zimbabwe. I mean, you know, when the coup actually happened, I mean, we all witnessed. It was, it was a celebration like never before. And, I'm glad, Trevor admitted to say, he was one of those people that actually, thought, let's give this guy a chance. He could be genuine. But some of us could see. I mean, you, what you have to look at is the foundation of ZANU PF. What does ZANU PF believe? ZANU PF does not believe in a democratic process. ZANU PF believes it is their divine right to rule. So, by that, that being said, nothing is for the people. The moment you remove democracy out of the picture, nothing is built for the people because the people are not involved in the very first instant. You know, I think, we are sometimes just incredibly naive. We are simply bought at, the cheapest price, where they like, I think we're cheaper than salt. We're cheaper than because I you know, we can't be easily manipulated at every turn, at every single turn. Surely we need to. We are people of reason. We're supposed to think.
Well, I think the question of have people learned, I don't think so. I really don't think the people have learned anything. They were so focused in 2017 on Mugabe must go. They did not care who would replace him. That is where you make the mistake. If you're going to learn something, you need to understand the mistake you made then was you were so focused on Mugabe must go, you forgot to look at and who are we putting in his place. The coup itself, when it took place, it was an internal matter within ZANU-PF. The people themselves, the ordinary Zimbabweans, were not involved. But I think by that time, the people should have been focusing on we must end the dictatorship and not just we must end Mugabe's rule. Ending Mugabe's rule, replacing the dictator, is not the same thing as ending the dictatorship. That is the subtle difference. The people were focused on removing the dictator Robert Gabriel Mugabe. They did not appreciate that without changing the system itself, we'll only be replacing one dictator with another. And I think when you're looking at people like Trevor Nube, these are the intellectuals, these are the opinion makers in the country, believing that because Mnangagwa had seen what Mugabe has been doing, he would now be a Democrat. I think it was naive, to say the very least. And in my view, that naivety is still there to this day. The people at the present moment are so focused on Mnangagwa must go. They've not focused on how are we going to succeed that and who is going to take his place. Particularly the latter. The former, how are we going to replace, to achieve removing Mnangagwa? And like I've said in the past, the process of ending the ZANU-PF dictatorship was twofold. And we learned this in the late 1990s. It's either we're going to have to go into another armed struggle to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship, or we're going to elect a competent opposition that will implement the democratic reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. We opted for the latter. And after 24 years, not even one token reform has been implemented. Not even one. And worse still, MDC CCC have been participating in flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy. And people have failed to follow that, which clearly shows they've not learned anything from the mistake of 2017. Because we are repeating the same mistake. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe, in my opinion.
I agree with you. It's incredibly naive of us. I mean, look, I've said this a lot of times, and I'll say it again. Zimbabwe is not short of presidential candidates. That is not the problem. I mean, right now everybody wants to see the backside of Mnangagwa, right? But who are you replacing with? And are they going to inherit the current system that is there? And the biggest problem with Zimbabwe right now is a toxic environment, an environment that perpetuates this dictatorship. Presidential candidates will come and go. It's like, we are painting a broken down vehicle so that it looks new. But the fact is, it's not going to move. It's broken. So let's fix the car first and then think about painting, because we know it's functional. And then we can look whoever wants to drive it. The only way, if we put democracy first, that way we are making the leader accountable to us. If we are not happy, we express and we kick him out easier. Anybody that is going to inherit, whether it be Chamisa, whether it be whoever who inherits this toxic environment, will want to hold on to power. No one is going to remove, to give away their power just because they are in office. Forget. It's always been, it's easier for somebody to implement reforms before they're actually in that position. Because once they're in there, they also want to consolidate for themselves. Just the same way ZANU-PF said, we fought the war. Whoever wins will tell you we've removed ZANU-PF and now it is our divine time. So the system is wrong. Fix it, and then you have an everlasting solution. But we also have to maintain it, though.
So my closing remark is really that as much as we would want to believe that we have learned a lesson, the truth is we have not. At the present moment, we're still focusing on the dictator. We are not focusing on the dictatorship. We think that the present system will work. There is a real danger that come 2028, Nelson Chamisa will con the people into believing that he can again perform one of his miracles, plug all the vote rigging loopholes, and win those elections. And the people will believe him and participate in those elections, only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy. It's not going to work that way. The ZANU-PF dictatorship, we could have dismantled it a long time ago. I think, yes, 2017 was also another opportunity. But if the truth be told, the best opportunity to have dismantled the ZANU-PF dictatorship was actually during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. We failed to implement even one token reform. We, the people, failed to realize that MDC guys sold out. And even to this day, the majority of the people have no clue that the GNU's primary purpose was to implement reforms. That level of ignorance is at the heart of why Zimbabwe is a failed state. That is the problem. Thank you very much. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I want to say, I want to remind people, at one point, Mugabe was the darling of Zimbabwe. People loved him, people adored him, heading into our first election. At one point, Mnangagwa was, the best thing that had ever happened to Zimbabwe in close to 4 decades. Ours is we are failing to understand why things turn bad or things go south easy. It is the system. This current environment perpetuates this dictatorship. It guarantees, it gives the dictatorship, something to feed on. And unless we change the system that is broken, whoever will come will be a thorn in our flesh at every given turn. So I urge everybody, yes, you may want Chamisa to be president. That is your right. I understand. But give him a chance to showcase what he has to do in a democratic system, such that if whatever goes wrong, he is accountable. He can easily be changed and get another candidate. That is all that we are trying to say. Let's fix the political system in Zimbabwe first, and then we can have competent leaders come out of a fresh, new, clean environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good night to everybody.